It happened on a Tuesday. A dusty wind was blowing in from the north, carrying with it the dry smell of summer dirt and distant cattle. I was in the barn, elbow deep in a busted generator, when I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. Not on the road. Not on the driveway. Through the damn field. I looked up and there she was, again. Karen. Not just any Karen. HOA President Karen of Oak Ridge Subdivision, 2 miles down the road, where her cookie-cutter house sat like a smug little monument to overregulation. She was behind the wheel of her gleaming silver SUV, sunglasses perched like a crown on her forehead. Her dog, a puffy white rat with anxiety issues, barked from the passenger seat like it paid rent. She waved at me like we were best friends. Smiling. Rolling right over the alfalfa I'd planted last fall. 3rd time this month. I dropped the wrench. I'd asked her to stop. Nicely. I'd put up signs. Private property. No through road. I even set up a makeshift fence after the second incident. She drove over it. Literally flattened the wire, snapped 2 posts, and never even glanced back. I tried calling the sheriff. They shrugged. It's a civil matter, they said. Talk to your HOA. I don't have an HOA. I live on a ranch, not in a box. She wasn't cutting through out of desperation either. No emergency. No flood. No wildfire. She was just shaving 7 minutes off her trip to the Pilates studio. And rubbing it in my face. So I stood there that day, covered in grease and rage, and something in me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't chase her. I just watched her drive off, that dog yapping, the alfalfa in her rearview. And I started planning. But before the plan came the past, and everything that led to this moment. It all really began 2 years earlier, when I inherited the ranch after my dad passed. His will was clear, the land was mine. All 40 acres of it. He wanted me to keep it running, to hold on to what generations before him had built. The house was a little worn down, and the barn needed patching, but it was home. My older sister, Michelle, wasn't thrilled. She thought we should have sold it. Split the money. Moved on. Michelle lived in Oak Ridge. Gated community. HOA board member. Karen's best friend. At the time, I thought Karen was just a nosy neighbor. She'd come by with Michelle now and then, big sunglasses, passive-aggressive compliments. Wow, it's so rustic out here. You actually sleep with the windows open? She asked once if I could trim the weeds near the road because they ruined the view when she passed by. That was before she started driving through the property. Back then I ignored it. Let it slide. Karen was just a nuisance. Michelle would scold me for being difficult. Remind me that relationships are important. And this neighborhood used to be part of your great-grandfather's property anyway. She made it sound like I owed Karen something. Like the land was a shared memory, not a legal boundary. But I noticed things started changing. One day a man from the city came to inspect the edge of my land, said he got a call about unsafe fencing. Next week, a letter from the county about my livestock being too close to a public easement. Then a warning about unauthorized burning, even though all I'd done was light a legal brush pile. And every time I traced it back, Karen's name came up. She was behind all of it. When I confronted Michelle, she didn't deny it. Karen's just trying to keep the area safe, she said. You could be more cooperative. More cooperative? I was alone out here. No neighbors to complain. No loud parties. Just me, a few horses, and the wind. Karen wasn't keeping things safe. She was trying to make a point. That this land didn't belong to me anymore. That even out here, miles from the nearest manicured lawn, she was still in control. I knew I had to do something, but not the way she expected. No shouting match. No threats. That's how she operated. She wanted the drama, the HOA meetings, the gossip. I'd give her something else. The landmines didn't start as actual explosives. That part comes later. At first, I laid out tire spikes made of sharpened rebar hidden beneath brush. Then I strung chicken wire through the tall grass, enough to snag an axle but not cause real harm. Just a message. The SUV blew a tire one morning around dawn. She left it there for hours, walking back to her neighborhood in her pristine yoga pants, fuming. She reported me. The deputy came out, glanced at the obstacles, and smirked. "Looks like yard art to me," he said. "Just be careful where you put it." Karen was furious. And that's when she crossed the line. She didn't just drive through anymore. She brought people with her. Real estate agents. Contractors. Surveyors. I caught one of them with a drone mapping the field. When I asked what the hell he was doing, he muttered something about future zoning potential, and drove off before I could get a license plate. That night I didn't sleep. And the next morning, I started digging. I didn't bury real landmines. Not yet. But the look on Karen's face when she hit the first one, priceless. It was a decoy, of course. A modified sprinkler head, spray-painted black and fitted with a cheap CO2 canister and a pressure plate. Something I'd learned watching old Mythbusters reruns and a few too many late-night YouTube survivalist channels. When her front tire pressed down, it hissed, popped, and sprayed a cloud of harmless baby powder into the air like a puff of war smoke. Dramatic as hell, and just loud enough to make her think she triggered something serious. She slammed the brakes, leapt out of the car screaming, and dropped her latte. I watched from the tree-line, crouched low behind a stand of mesquites. Every inch of me was buzzing with adrenaline. It wasn't just about the property anymore, it was about power. She'd been walking all over me, and now she was scared. Finally. She spun in circles, shrieking into her phone, probably calling the sheriff again. Good luck explaining that one. I wasn't even on her road. She was on mine. Still, I didn't take joy in it. Not fully. There was something deeper under the surface now. Something I hadn't felt since Dad died. Because this wasn't just about Karen. It was about Michelle, too. A week before the first landmine, Michelle and I had dinner at our mother's place. Lasagna night. She made a big deal about it every month. Family bonding, she called it. But the second Michelle walked in, I knew something was off. Her hair was styled to perfection, her nails still wet from the salon, and her lips were twisted into that fake sweet smile she wore when she had bad news to sugarcoat. She waited until we were halfway through the garlic bread to drop the bomb. "Karen's considering buying your back pasture," she said, sipping wine like it was no big deal. "She might develop it into an equestrian extension for Oak Ridge." I nearly choked. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "That land's not for sale." Michelle shrugged, like I was overreacting. "She's already got some paperwork in motion. Zoning board is reviewing it. And technically, part of that area is in a shared easement zone. She just wants to make sure everything's in line." "Zoning board?" I snapped. "What the hell, Michelle? You told her about the boundaries?" "She's my friend," she said. "And I thought if she could help raise the value of the neighborhood, maybe we could all benefit." Benefit. There it was. She didn't care about the ranch. She wanted the money. Just like she always had. Michelle had never forgiven me for getting the land. She thought she deserved it because she was older. Because she went to college. Because she had plans. What she didn't understand, what she never understood, was that I didn't choose this place. It chose me. Dad knew I was the only one who could keep it going. Now Karen wanted to carve it up for horse trails and HOA-approved fences? Not on my watch. So I escalated. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. But it wouldn't be a loud, messy one. It would be slow. Strategic. Psychological. Over the next 2 weeks, I laid out more of the fake mines, different styles. Some hissed, some popped. One let out a high-pitched alarm sound that echoed across the pasture like a siren. I planted motion-triggered spotlights hidden in hay bales. Rigged a Bluetooth speaker to blast coyote howls whenever her SUV crossed the gate line. The best one? A custom-built mannequin in a flannel shirt, slumped against a fence post, holding a sign that said, "I warned you." She nearly had a heart attack. Karen posted on the Oak Ridge message board that she was being targeted by a domestic terrorist, and that the property to the south is unsafe and possibly booby-trapped. I screenshotted every post and saved them. Evidence. Then came the big twist. She stopped driving through. Cold turkey. And just when I thought I'd won, she came back. But this time, she wasn't alone. One late afternoon, I saw dust rising at the far end of the pasture. I grabbed my binoculars and froze. 3 black SUVs. All unmarked. All expensive. They didn't bounce like her usual joyride. They crept, slow and deliberate. The kind of crawl people make when they're inspecting something valuable. I pulled out my phone, started snapping photos. The passenger door opened, and a tall man stepped out. Clean cut. Dark blazer. Sunglasses, even though the sun was starting to dip. He looked around like he was casing the joint. Not admiring the land, assessing it. Karen followed close behind, pointing toward the barn, gesturing like she owned the place. Then Michelle stepped out of the third vehicle. My throat tightened. She was smiling. Not the fake polite smile. A real one. The kind she used to wear when she won first place in middle school debates. The kind that said, "I've already won." That's when I realized. They weren't just looking. They were planning to take it all. And suddenly, powder-filled pranks and fake landmines weren't going to cut it. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was war. 3 nights after those black SUVs rolled across my field like a silent invasion, I started laying out the real stuff. Not bombs, nothing illegal. Not yet. But the land was about to get a lot more dangerous. I wasn't just defending a piece of dirt. I was defending my father's legacy. My childhood. My peace. I'd lost enough. So I called up Danny, an old army buddy of my dad's who owed him more than a few favors. Quiet guy. Knew his way around security systems and trench warfare, literal and emotional. The kind of man who could wire an electric fence and disappear before sunrise. We'd only met once before, at Dad's funeral. He gave me a long handshake that day and said, "If you ever need to hold a line, call me." I needed to hold a line. And I needed it fast. By the next morning, Danny had parked his beat-up Chevy out behind the barn and unpacked gear that looked like it came straight out of a military supply catalog. Infrared trail cams. Pressure pads. Warning signs that looked real enough to make even the bravest contractor think twice. We spent hours crawling through the brush, laying them out like chess pieces. "This isn't just about stopping them," Danny said as we worked. "It's about making them wonder what they can't see." By sundown, we had the entire east pasture rigged with deterrents, non-lethal but terrifying. At the front gate, we posted a news sign. "Survivors will be prosecuted." And then I waited. The next time Karen showed up, she wasn't laughing. She was screaming. I'd installed a small speaker in the tree line. It was motion-triggered, connected to a recorded loop of snarling dogs and a voice screaming, "Turn around! This is your last warning!" The second her SUV crossed the invisible line, it went off. She slammed on the brakes and started bawling, real tears this time. I watched through the binoculars as she backed up so fast she hit her own mailbox trying to get out. She didn't even stop to check the damage. But I wasn't celebrating. Because that night, while I was sleeping, someone cut my fence. It wasn't an accident. They didn't just snip it, they gutted it. Left the wires twisted and piled like a warning. Something had changed. Karen wasn't acting alone anymore. She had backup. Real backup. Developers. Lawyers. People who didn't care about signs or property lines or tradition. And then, Michelle served me papers. She came up the driveway the next morning in heels, holding a manila envelope and a look of cold triumph. "This is a courtesy," she said. "The formal notice is being filed today." I opened it. Inside, a petition to seize the rear pasture under eminent domain, backed by the Oak Ridge HOA and a proposed land use ordinance that hadn't even passed yet. "This is illegal," I said, my voice low. "No," Michelle said. "It's progress." I wanted to scream, to rip the paper in half, to drag her off the land she never wanted until someone waved a $sign in her face. But I didn't. I just nodded. Quiet. Calm. And when she turned to leave, I said, "This is the last time you'll walk across this land without a consequence." She paused. Just for a second. Then kept walking. That night, I made the real call. Not to Danny. Not to the sheriff. To Mr. Walker. He was the oldest man in town. Used to own the lumber mill before it shut down. Lived in the hills past the river. And he knew everything about everyone. I told him what was happening. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I know something about Karen that you might find useful." That's when I learned the truth. About her past. About the lawsuit that almost bankrupted her 3 years ago. About the land deal that cost the local church their community center. About the hush money. Walker sent me scanned documents. Court files. Settlement reports. Proof. The next morning, I printed it all. Put it in a big yellow envelope. Drove down to Oak Ridge, right to Karen's pristine front porch. And left it under her welcome mat. No note. No message. Just truth. By nightfall, every major Oak Ridge board member had a copy in their mailbox. Unmarked. She called me 32 times that night. I didn't answer. She was imploding. Michelle showed up at the ranch the next day, face red, eyes wild. "Did you do this?" she yelled. I didn't even pretend to deny it. "You want to take my land?" I said. "Fine. But let's see what happens when the HOA finds out who's been running it." I thought that would be the end. But that's when Karen broke the last rule. She came at me, with fire. Literally. That night, a spark caught the west pasture. Dry grass. Open air. Wind. It spread fast. If I hadn't been awake, hadn't smelled the smoke, it could have taken everything. I spent 2 hours with a hose and shovel, putting it out. By dawn, the field was scorched black. And I was done playing games. The field was still smoldering when I made the decision. Ash clung to my boots. The smell of burned hay and betrayal clung to my clothes. I didn't need proof. I knew Karen lit that fire. I saw her SUV's fresh tracks by the fence line, and the empty gas can tossed in the ditch like it would just disappear. And Michelle? She went silent. No texts. No calls. She knew too. But she wasn't about to admit it, not when she had her name all over that petition. They wanted my land. Now I was going to make sure they choked on it. I called Danny back. Told him to bring everything. Then I spent 3 days preparing. No sleep. No breaks. Just me, the dirt, and the fire still burning behind my eyes. I mapped out the entire back pasture, every weak spot, every blind corner, every pressure point in the land itself. I wasn't just going to scare them. I was going to bury them. Figuratively, but with the kind of force that would haunt them forever. I strung up fresh wire, legal, but nasty. Set up new signs. Had motion-triggered sprinklers loaded with foul-smelling dye, fermented buttermilk and food coloring, the kind that stains clothes and dignity. But the real trap? The psychological one? That took place at the county records office. You see, while Karen was busy trying to rezone my land, she forgot something. Her own backyard had skeletons. Literally. I'd remembered a rumor from old Mr. Walker. The land Karen built her house on used to be a cemetery. One that was never properly cleared. And thanks to the files he gave me, and a well-timed Freedom of Information Act request, I found the original documents. Unsealed. Unresolved. The HOA never declared it. They built homes on top of it. And once I had the proof, I sent it straight to the local news. With photos. With coordinates. And with one perfect headline. "Are you living on bones? Oak Ridge subdivision faces cemetery scandal." By noon the next day, Karen's face was on every local station. Reporters camped outside her house. Homeowners were demanding refunds. Lawsuits were forming. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, without her. And the best part? She still tried to drive through my pasture to escape the media. Only this time, she triggered the real mine. Not explosive paint. The pressure plate went off like a thunderclap. A geyser of red sludge, corn syrup and biodegradable dye shot up beneath her SUV, splattering the undercarriage, the wheels, the entire side panel. She skidded, panicked, veered straight into the ditch. I walked down calmly, hands in my pockets, boots crunching across the gravel. She was shaking, covered in red, looking like she just survived a horror movie. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You'll pay for this." I smiled. "That's funny. I was about to say the same thing." I tossed her a white envelope. Inside? A restraining order. Filed that morning. Signed by a judge. She was officially banned from coming within 500 feet of my land. That included the dirt road she was so desperate to cut across. Michelle came to the ranch 2 days later. Alone. Pale. Quiet. She didn't park in the driveway. Just stood by the front gate, like a kid waiting to be let in. "I didn't know it would go that far," she said softly. "Karen, she lost everything." I nodded. "She tried to burn my home down, Michelle." "I didn't know," she whispered. I studied her face. She looked older. Smaller. Like all that power she'd wrapped herself in had evaporated. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to apologize," she said. "I was wrong. About everything." For a moment I believed her. But I didn't let her in. "Apologies are good," I said. "But they don't rebuild fences. Or trust." She nodded. "If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me." And then she turned and left. This time, she didn't look back. It's been 6 months. Karen moved out of Oak Ridge. Last I heard, she's living in a trailer near Dallas, avoiding lawsuits like landmines. Michelle and I talk sometimes. Texts mostly. Nothing deep. But the ranch is quiet now. The fields have regrown. And every so often, I walk out to the back pasture and stand where the fire scorched the earth. Not to remember the damage, but to remember that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. And sometimes you have to bury the past to protect